And with that, we're going to move on to our next topic, as I mentioned, Social Media 101, holding them accountable. And I'm going to welcome to the stage Tabitha Hale. She is our Director of New Media at the Franklin Center. Tabitha has a very impressive background in social media. She comes to us from FreedomWorks, an activist organization where she did a lot of training and equipping citizens as well, but she's had quite a bit of success in this sphere and is very well positioned to teach each and every one of you and how you can use these tools and use them effectively. So this should be a good presentation, one to pay close attention to, and we hope if you're not involved in these tools and using them effectively that after this you will be. So with that, please welcome to the stage Tabitha Hale.
All right. Now, Eric is going to pass around some notepads here. And how many of you are on Twitter? Are a lot of you on Twitter? Handful? Okay. Those of you that are on Twitter, write your Twitter handles down on this notepad. And at the end of the day, what I'll do is create a list on Twitter and send it out from the Franklin Center account so you can make sure to start following and connecting with everybody in this room and follow that list. And hopefully you'll be able to connect with some people that maybe you didn't know, or keep better track of what some of your colleagues across the state are doing. So we have a whole bunch of them floating around. If you could just make sure that you write it down on one of them, we'll collect them all at the end, and then I will take those and go from there. So, social media, just a quick poll. I saw a bunch of you are on Twitter, more than I thought. I'm kind of surprised and impressed and excited about that. Facebook, are most of you on Facebook? Okay, good. Just put down your Twitter handles. This is specifically for Twitter, so I'm just trying to get a gauge on where you guys are at. Yes. Okay. So some of the tools, this is what we're going to go over a little bit. Twitter, Facebook, blogs, and how to kind of coordinate them and how you can be most effective by combining all of these resources, because at the end of the day, they're all the same, different pieces of a much larger puzzle. Twitter, to me, is important because, first of all, it's the only social network that conservatives are dominant on. This screenshot is from an article that came out from a Comedy Central writer the other day, whining about conservative hashtag games ruining their Twitter experience because we're just so not funny. But anytime you make it into the national narrative like this, you're breaking out of our little echo chamber, our little bubble, and into mainstream culture. To me, that is a huge win. And this is an acknowledgement that we are a dominant force on Twitter, that we're driving the narrative there, and that is something that can't be overlooked. And I encourage every single one of you, and we're going to get into some of the details on how to do this, but there's a whole conversation happening there, and the more voices we have, the better. Twitter, I view as a place that the story is shaped before it ever gets written. What I mean by that is journalists, reporters, radio personalities, television personalities, they are all on Twitter, and especially during large events, during legislative battles, all of those things that you guys already do such a good job of paying attention to and emailing about and posting on Facebook about and reacting to, they're trolling Twitter for that information. How many of you guys watch the news and see tweets quoted on a pretty much daily basis now? Reporters don't have time all of the time to reach out and get quotes from people. So being able to use Twitter and just pull a quote from there and say, oh, look, this organization said that, this activist in this area said that, and they can really gauge the reaction to things before it ever gets written, and that shapes the story before they ever have time to put words in that article. And that is incredibly influential, and that's what we want to accomplish, is changing the story before it's ever even written. It's a way to connect with people you wouldn't normally connect to, because most of you don't hang out with your talk radio host every single day. You don't hang out with your television personalities every single day, or reporters. This is a way, or even your legislators, and this is a way to have a direct communication to them without actually having to pick up that phone or foster, a day-to-day relationship. So at replies, we'll kind of go into a little bit, but this is a way to directly communicate with somebody, so it shows up in their Twitter account, and you can stay on their radar, stay on their consciousness, ask them questions that nobody else is asking them, and really hold their feet to the fire. And these are just a couple of the things, just basic technological things we're going to get into, but finding people on Twitter, this tool from the DCI group, which I will put up on the screen again at the end, is awesome, and it's a way to find all of your legislators and find everything. So the point is that these resources are out there. You can find all of your legislators, all of your congressmen, your senators, your governor. All of those people are pretty much on social media at this point, and you have a direct line to all of them. Yeah, I can put it up again at the end, but I'll leave it up for just another second if you want to jot that down. What the DCI group has done is an incredible job of aggregating all of the social media feeds for state legislators. So you can go in, click on your state, and see your House, your Senate, and all of those, and they have the Facebook and Twitter accounts linked next to them. So they've done all of that work aggregating that for you. Some of them are blank. Not all of the officials are actually on all these social media channels yet, but the ones that are there are pretty much there. I think some of them might be a little bit dated. It's hard to kind of keep that database up, but it's a really good place to start if you're looking to connect. So some of the ins and outs of Twitter. A lot of you aren't on Twitter yet. To me, it's a lot more simple than Facebook. They don't ask for all of the information that Facebook asks for. To me, it feels kind of invasive. They want your work history, they want your job, they want your education history, they want photos, location, all of that stuff. Twitter is pretty much an email, a Twitter handle, a name, and an avatar. And that's all that they ask for to sign up with. Your bio is only 160 characters, I think. So everything is very, very short form and very, very fluid. It's very quick to sign up. And once you sign up, there are all kinds of really cool tools to kind of organize your experience and make it as manageable as possible for you on a day-to-day basis. So those of you that are on Twitter, are you guys familiar with third-party applications, Hootsuite, TweetDeck, those kind of things, or no? Okay, great. We'll take a look at these. Here, actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it on this computer. But I'll kind of write those down. And what they do is you don't even have to log into the internet. You can download the application to your computer, put in your social media account information, and manage everything just from one application that you don't even have to log in through the web to do. You punch in your password one time, it remembers it, and you can go ahead and organize things through there. Creating lists. Are you guys familiar with lists? Lists are an absolutely amazing tool on Twitter, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up a couple lists here. Once you log in, right here. So these are lists that I have created. And these are ways to follow people in one specific group. So I'm following almost 4,000 people. It's really hard to keep up with that many people, and generally I'm not paying attention to all of them at the same time. So what I've done is we've got lists here that have been created. Journalists, these are all of our Franklin Center reporters. And I can click on this list and see only the things that those people are tweeting. So if I want to follow a particular group of people, maybe it's my state legislators, maybe it's, a list of congressmen, maybe it's, people that are influential on a specific issue in Florida. You can create and manage those lists however you like and add people to it. And it's a great way to just keep track of that particular conversation. So for example, this is a conference that I hosted with the Franklin Center in Charlotte. And what we were able to do is put a list together. So these are just the bloggers that attended that particular event. And so leading up to it is a great way to just kind of keep tabs on people, be able to communicate with the right group of people. And that's just on your end to be able to kind of manage your feed and make it a little bit more easy for you to handle. And so these are just a couple of suggestions of things that you can do with that. Local media, it's a great thing to set up a list for and follow. If you aren't tracking, what your local reporters are saying, it's a great way to kind of watch them, to interact with them, to challenge them on certain things. Maybe if they're not covering a story that's a big story, sending it to them and saying, hey, why aren't you covering this yet? And send them links to some blogs with some information on it. When you're addressing them, make sure that you use their Twitter handles. So what that means is that when you're in Twitter and you see these little @ symbols, that is a symbol that put in front of their Twitter handle will put it directly into their mentions column. So anybody that's talking to them, whether they're following you or not, they can see that. And so, for example, when I look at my @mentions, these are all people that are talking to me. So Slade O'Brien is tweeting me from the room saying, hey, but I can see this all in real time directly to me. And so this is a really cool way to kind of reach out to legislators in a way that we never had a direct line to them to do before. And again, @replies use them all the time, because if you're tweeting something out and you're not mentioning them in it, chances are they're not going to see it. So you really want to make sure when you're calling out your state legislators that you put that in there. I've had great success with this. With FreedomWorks, we hosted, we were helping out with a school choice campaign in Pennsylvania. And putting the @replies in front of these GOP House leaders to put pressure on them to actually move the ball forward on this particular piece of legislation, they were so not used to that kind of pressure, and they had no idea how many people were following those of us that were tweeting them. They didn't know how many people it was reaching, but they were so stressed out that we had tweeted their phone number and said, call them. They couldn't even handle it. So they completely lost it. They go to the local press and say, we're harassing them. We're tweeting out their public office number. And it actually made headlines just because we were tweeting at them and they could not handle the pressure. And state legislators, this is just a great way to kind of go directly to them. Hashtags. Hashtags are a way that you can self-aggregate information on Twitter. It's a very organic way to follow things. So, for example, we're using the Citizen Watchdog hashtag today. What that is, there's no directory, there's no set list of them. You don't have to file it anyway or create it anyway. You just put a # in front of a few different letters or a word. So things like the Smart Girl Politics group uses SGP, or TCOD is kind of a generic conservative hashtag, or say, we're live tweeting things like the State of the Union or the State of the State address. You can do SOTU, #SOTU, and that's a way to track everybody that's tweeting about the State of the Union using that hashtag. I know Florida has a few specific hashtags, like SAYFIE, I think is one of the biggest ones I see for Florida. Or some states have like FL-Leg, so Florida Legislature, and that's a great way to kind of keep tabs on that conversation. North Carolina, it's NC Paul. And you just kind of learn this by asking, if you don't know what a hashtag is, say, hey guys, what are we using for this particular event? What are we using for this speech tonight? So we can track that conversation together. And it's a really, really helpful tool to be able to follow a larger conversation and communicate with people that you're not necessarily following and aren't necessarily following you. It works because, like I was saying, they're not used to being watched. The heat on social platforms freaks them out. Emails and phone calls end up being a tally mark at the end of the day, and you're still anonymous. The official will go in, they'll ask their office, how many yays or nays on this, how many yays or nays on that, but you're still a faceless tally mark, and they can go in and choose to ignore it or not. I've heard several officials tell me that just based on looking at their Twitter feed, because they can see a face attached to that message, and they see the message and maybe why you encourage them to vote against this or vote for something. There's a personal aspect of that, and the vast majority of these legislators will look at their @mentions personally. Even if they're not running it, their communications person can simply hold up their iPhone and they can see that whole mentions column. So that's a very, very important tool in a way that you can connect with them, that it goes a little step further than an email or a phone call does. The other piece of it is that everything you tweet out is public, unless you send it as a direct message, which we don't need to get into necessarily, but it's all public. And so the reporters can see if there's a whole bunch of people outraged and they're trying to put pressure on this person and say, stop, don't pass this, don't build that, don't do this project. They can gauge that outrage, and sometimes that's a story in and of itself. I see all the time where it'll get picked up when there's a conservative outrage over this, or there's a backlash over this, or this person said that, and we're able to really put pressure on people, get them to apologize for things, get them to acknowledge that there's a problem somewhere that maybe otherwise would fly under the radar. All right, so we'll go into I'll do a little bit of hands-on. I want to leave some of the Q&A for the end, and we can go a little bit into the nuts and bolts of how to handle Twitter. But do we have any bigger, broad questions about Twitter as a general rule, or should we move on to Facebook and save them for the end? Save them for the end? Okay. Facebook, obviously, most of you are more familiar with than Twitter. It's the largest social network. It actually just went public yesterday for the largest IPO ever in the history of ever, which is ridiculous. We're almost at 1 billion users. It's well over 900 million users at this point. People who aren't on Twitter, you're reaching a different demographic on Facebook than you are on Twitter. Facebook is a little more personal. You're connecting with people that maybe you go to school with, go to church with, have been friends with, your family, those kind of groups. So it's a little bit more personal. There's a little bit more of a personal touch there. There's a better click-through rate on Facebook, which means that basically people respond more, people engage more and interact more, because chances are they know that person better that's posting in their feed. So I think it's something like 20%, 1 in 5 of all clicks, as in page views on the internet, are Facebook generated, which is insane when you think of how much content there is on the internet and how much of that is filtered through Facebook. So there's a huge platform there to be able to reach people. This is from a study that was released yesterday in conjunction with Facebook going public. Compared with other internet users and users of social networking platforms, a Facebook user who sees the site multiple times a day is an additional 2.5 times more likely to attend a political rally or meeting, 57% more likely to persuade someone on their vote, and 43% more likely to have said they would vote. So the point of that is that people that are actively using social media are going to be a lot more engaged, they're going to be a lot more active, and probably a little bit more in tune with the things that are happening locally. Those numbers are absolutely huge. So when you think about the kind of people that you can influence just by reaching social media and using these platforms, it really is a tool that is changing the game politically. As far as affecting, change and putting some heat on your officials, like pages are probably what most of your officials are going to have at this point. And you can find those in a few different ways. Sometimes I look at people that I know would like that person and just kind of see, if it's a mutual friend that I know has a lot of the same interests and passions and respects a lot of the same people, I know that they're probably going to like a lot of the same people that I'm going to want to like. So I'll go through and check that out. You can also use Google to say, Rick Scott Facebook and find that Facebook page pretty quickly. Or you can just do a Facebook search. But it's a great way to kind of keep an eye on them. I would like a bunch of them, and so you can see their posts on a day-to-day basis and know what they're up to. Make sure that if you link a video or an article or something related to, or you're making a comment, quoting something that person has said, you can, do you guys know how to tag an @ mention on Facebook where you can tag somebody in a post? You put an @ symbol, and then if you're liking or friend with that person and you start typing their name, it'll pop up and you can actually link back, and that post will show up on that other person's page. So say I wanted to make a comment about my congressman and I'm posting an article about something he said. Just by putting the @ symbol in front of that name, Facebook will help tag it, and then it'll show up on that page publicly. And that's a really cool thing because you can actually get that message out to anybody who's going to that person's page. Also, you can ask questions on their page, post on their public page. It's totally okay for you to do that, and I think now it's an even bigger deal when they delete your post instead of responding to it, because they have an opportunity there by asking them a question publicly on their Facebook page. You're giving them an opportunity to address that issue. If they choose to delete it, you can go back and say, why aren't you answering this question? Why are you deleting this? I posted it on your wall 3 times and it keeps disappearing. That's not okay. So there's a great way to kind of use that public forum where other people can see what's going on, other people can interact and jump in, and those conversations will start just by using that public page on Facebook. Do you have any questions about, I don't want to get into, I want to keep this kind of focused because there's so much that we can go into on Facebook, but hopefully there's a couple tips there that'll help you kind of keep people accountable and really engage in a specific way. Blogs. Are you guys familiar with blogs or bloggers? Do you guys know any of them? I think we have Javier in the back who runs the Shark Tank, who has done incredible work in the state of Florida. That's basically what you guys are, citizen journalists, people that are doing work that are not professional journalists, that are not employed by newspapers or radio stations or television stations, that are reporting on and analyzing and covering news on a day-to-day basis. Some of the benefits of that are that they're free from, the chains of the legacy media. They are not beholden to anybody except themselves. So they have a free platform to really say what they want to say. They're incredibly valuable because they're doing the work that the media just does not have the ability to do anymore, especially on local issues. We've got some great people across the country who have shown up when the media can't and just gone to their city council meetings. And just having a person in the room with a camera makes them change their behavior. Eric and I always use the example of Bob Weeks in Kansas, who started showing up at his city council meetings, and they started, putting on suits instead of jeans. And they started responding to things that he wrote because they knew that someone was watching, and it's amazing how differently they'll behave when they know that somebody is paying attention, because chances are they think that no one is ever going to know what they're going to do, and they think that they're completely free to vote and do whatever they want and however is best going to benefit them instead of benefit their community. So just having one person in the room show up with a camera and write about it. We spoke to a woman in Ohio last week who does nothing but go to city council meetings in Toledo, Ohio, and write up the minutes and send them to one of the bloggers so that she can publish them on her site. So those city council meeting minutes are getting posted every single week. Whereas before they were a little tiny blurb in the local paper once a week, now they're published in full and searchable by Google every single week. That kind of stuff is absolutely game-changing, because they know now that somebody is watching and that chances are they will be held accountable for their actions. Ooh. No. The truth is that Florida needs more of them. There are some states that have stronger blogospheres than others, and Florida is such an important state this year. There's so much going on that there is insane amount of opportunity for you guys to really change the game, influence the narrative, and tell your friends and your family and people around you what is going on in your community. Because the chances are your local media does not have the resources to do it, and you guys do. This is just a little bit more on how bloggers can actually influence. Politicians are narcissists. They like to hear people talking about them, and they want to know everything that's being said. Chances are they run Google alerts on their names. So what that means is a Google alert you can set up through Google, and they get an email notifying them anytime anyone has mentioned them on the internet, whether it's on a website, a news article, a blog, even tweets I think show up a lot of the time now. So that is huge, because if you have 4 or 5 people write about a specific issue and ask the same question, that official is going to see it show up in their inbox 4 or 5 times, and wow, why are this many people paying attention? You could have 6 readers, including your mom, and it doesn't matter because they don't know that, but they see a well thought out article mentioning them and calling them out on an issue that they thought nobody was paying attention to. That puts pressure on them, and you can even get them to respond to things that they're not necessarily planning on responding to just by putting it out there on the internet. The other piece of that is Google doesn't pick up emails. So you can write stuff up and send it around to your friends and post on Facebook. That's not going to show up on Google. A blog post does. So if nobody else is publishing this story, you want it to be public and you want it searchable when somebody searches for that politician's name, get some bloggers to write about it and start putting it out there so it shows up and so that information is accessible to other people. That's a little bit more about the media. Failing, they're not covering things that they should be covering and sending it to bloggers and really generating buzz there. There's been so many stories, especially recently, that have been broken in the blogosphere. Things like even Fast and Furious, something of that level, the media was failing to cover over and over. It was the bloggers, it was the internet push, it was people like Katie Pavlich who were relentless, hammering away, pushing these stories out over and over and over, forcing them to respond. There was one reporter that was covering Fast and Furious in DC who actually walked into a restaurant, saw Eric Holder, and Eric Holder exited out the back door so he didn't have to face this guy who's a new reporter in DC. But that's the kind of pressure that can be had online, because you know for sure Eric Holder knows who these people are. You want to be that person to your state legislator. You want them to be afraid of you to the point where they know that you're going to tell the truth, and they don't want you to be able to do that. So you have every opportunity to do this. Use your bloggers. Use people like Javier in the back there who's not even paying attention to me, because he has a huge network in the state of Florida. And, he did nothing but follow Charlie Crist around with the camera the entire campaign. And every time he turned around, he had a camera in Charlie Crist's face saying something dumb, and then he would blast it out to everybody that would listen. And that has a huge, huge, huge impact. But none of this matters without coordination. You can't be the one person screaming into the wind. You have to have a network. You have to have people around you that are helping push this message, whether it's groups, whether it's other bloggers, whether it's other activists. You find your network and find a group of people, because there is strength in numbers. Helping to pitching to influencers, find other groups that are active on this issue. So maybe if you find something that's relevant to environmental, there's huge waste happening, on taxpayer dime in your county. Send it to your local environmental group. Send it to these people, and people that think that this is relevant information. Make sure that they pay attention to it, because chances are they're going to want to help you. if there's enough voices, it can only be ignored for so long. So these things can bang around on the internet, and there will be more and more and more pressure building as more and more people hear about it, and eventually you can force the mainstream media to pay attention. And we have seen this happen over and over and over again. So find a story, send it to your reporters, use Twitter, use Facebook, connect with them however you can find to connect with them, and get this information out there, because that is what people respond to. They respond to a lot of press. They don't want to be viewed negatively, and if they can squish it, they will, but eventually they're going to respond. I want to dive in a little more. This is my email and my Twitter handle, but I want to leave the rest of the time. I don't know, how much do I have, Mary Ellen? Okay, I want to do as much Q&A as possible because I know that the technology stuff can be kind of confusing. So I want to make sure that I have an opportunity here to go through with you and talk to you guys. So let's start with Twitter. Tech questions on Twitter. Trouble you've had with Twitter? Yes. Yes, yes. Twitchy is an amazing resource. That is a website that was started by Michelle Malkin not too long ago, and what they do is they track conversations on Twitter. And so if you go to Twitchy, instead of having to follow all of these people and communicate with all of these people and read 1,000 tweets, you can log in pretty quickly and see exactly what is happening and who said what. So for example, this story, Baby Grayson Walker, so this is a story about Facebook removing offensive pictures of a baby with a birth defect. And so what they did is tracked tweets from a bunch of different people and turned it into a story that's a lot easier to digest, complete with links and context and everything else. There's videos involved, and they do this with tons and tons of different stories. So this is a fight that Dana Lash had with Tommy Christopher about, different things. So what they do is they make it digestible so you don't have to necessarily go through and do the back and forth, and you can log in pretty quickly and see what that conversation is and what people are talking about. So twitchy.com. I'm a huge fan.
More questions? If you'd stand up.
Yeah, is there
Yeah.
is there a place on the internet that we can go to learn more in our own time how to work with Twitter or something like, or is it
There's
a good
some
site?
how-to guides. What you can do is, I will include, and I meant to do this last week for Ohio, and we didn't do this, Mary Ellen. I have a guide that I'm happy to send a link to in the email that goes out on Wednesday. That's kind of a screenshot, play-by-play of how to get set up and how to get started and some of the third-party applications and stuff that you can use to help organize it. So I'm happy to send that around. I think that at the end of the day, social media is social and it's very personal, and so the best thing to do is look at the tools available, and I've got a bunch of them listed in that guide, and then use the ones that work for you. Don't use the ones that don't work for you. And there are ways within Twitter and things to personalize it as much as you can. You don't have to follow people you don't want to follow. You don't have to talk to people you don't want to talk to. You can, only pay attention to certain things. You can pay attention to certain hashtags. So I would just, take the time, and it's worth that day of setup to really dive in. And once you've got it, you've got it. So I'm happy. I'll include that guide this week. And if Mary Ellen, you can help me remember to do that.
Yeah, I'll make sure that gets in the resources
that'll be really
email
helpful.
that will go out next week.
Absolutely. Next question.
Where's the guide at? Where is the guide?
Where is the guide? It's a Word document.
Oh, yeah.
We'll send it around.
Yeah, there's going to be a resource email that goes out next week. It usually goes on Tuesday or Wednesday. If you pre-registered online, I have your email address. If you sign the sheet on the back table, I have your email address, and we'll make sure that all these resources are sent on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, so that'll be handed around for you to, whoever, go.
I know that Franklin is starting one, but are there other networks for beginning blogger to link into and kind of build up an audience?
That's a really interesting question. I think that the closest thing we have to that at this point is Twitter. There is no official network in most states, and I don't know of one in Florida. I could be wrong, Javier. I don't think there's not like a Blogger Alliance or anything set up in Florida, is there? No. I know Colorado has one, Florida has one, but maybe there's an opportunity to start one. Start connecting with people that are doing this, start a Google group, and start talking to each other. The most important thing in this whole situation is communication. So What I've been able to do at a national level is really connect with people via Google Groups, via Twitter lists, and Facebook, and just start friending everybody. And Ohio's done a really great job adding people to blog roles. So once you have your website set up, having a list of other bloggers right there, and that's just a widget within a lot of these blogs, which if you don't have a website, don't worry about it. But if you do, really adding people to those lists and making sure that you're linking each other as much as possible. I don't think that there is anything official yet in Florida specifically. So that's an opportunity.
Yes, I have a blog as well as Twitter and Facebook in constant contact, and the thing I'm running into is a strategy for the logical process for flooding your information out through those. Can you maybe explain how you integrate your different tools?
Absolutely. Blogging is a lot more static. It's something that you're going to want to invest a lot more time in. It's obviously more long form. You want to do more research, link back to other posts, other news sources. That's where you embed videos, photos, all of that kind of stuff happens on your blog. So the blog is kind of the mothership, if you will. You can also link on Facebook, and like I said, there's much more interaction on Facebook just because people tend to know people better, and they're going to click and read things from their friends. A lot of people want to keep their Facebooks, separate from politics. I don't know what that looks like in your world, but I got most of the traffic on Twitter from my personal blog because I was able to connect with people that were able to push that information out even further, link it on their websites and those sort of things. So I just made it a point where if I saw somebody talking about a certain issue and I had more information that I'd written about to connect to that, I would say, oh, hey, by the way, I saw you just wrote about this. Did you also see this? Did you also see that this is happening here? And you can even do that at the national level. Say, yeah, I saw you writing about, a pension reform. Here's what's happening in my county in Florida. And there's ways that they'll integrate that and drive traffic back to your site as well. I think that I generally advise against the auto feed thing because they tend to clutter up people's Facebook feeds and Twitter feeds, and they just look a little messy because people know when it's a machine talking to them, and they're a lot less likely to click through and take action on that. So I would first, you want to start with the blog. You want to link on Facebook, and you'll probably want to post on Twitter, as well. And I kind of do it all simultaneously if it's something big. I don't post everything on Facebook just because posting on Facebook too many times a day stresses people out and they tend to hide you. And you don't want that to happen. So Twitter's a little bit different. You can post as many things a day out as you want to. And what I'll do a lot of times is take a different hook, maybe, a different sentence, something that I think is interesting, and post the same story 3 or 4 different times, but use a different sentence, use a different angle, use a different line, maybe reply a different person if I'm trying to put pressure on somebody. Hey, so-and-so, do you want to respond to this? Or, hey, so-and-so, did you see this? And, you can really draw attention to things that way and post the same link in several different ways on Twitter and be creative.
Hi, some help on being able to exploit an app like TweetDeck.
Okay. I wish I had my computer set up. We don't have TweetDeck on this computer, do you, Mary Ellen? Okay. TweetDeck, for those who don't know, I might be able to even do this. It is an application that you download. TweetDeck. Yep, tweetdeck.com. And so when you go here, it'll show you. Okay, and this is kind of what TweetDeck looks like, and it sets up different columns. And so right here, you've got a home column, that's everybody that they're following. That's people that are replying them, so those are mentions, people that are talking to them. You can see through there. An inbox, those are direct messages or private messages that only you and the person that sent it to you can see. And it's just a great way to kind of aggregate that together. The way I use it best is honestly for searching and keeping track of things. So I'll run searches on my name, on the name of, whoever I'm trying to track, whether it's, paying attention to, stuff in Wisconsin, tracking, the Wisconsin Union hashtag is a big deal. So following that feed, following Governor Walker's name, following, Occupy Madison, all those different things. And you can kind of figure out what makes sense to track for you, whether it's your organization's name, whether you're, tracking a particular story, if you're following a story that's happening in your state. Follow the people involved in that and see who's mentioning that story, who's mentioning those people's names. And you can have as many columns as you'd like to have in TweetDeck. And all you have to do is press this little plus button, type in, it'll prompt you to search, and you can type in whatever name you want, and it'll automatically add it as a column for you. So that's a great way to kind of mine for information as well as push it out. And I think you have to view it as a two-way conversation to get the most out of it. So read as much as you post. I read a lot more than I post, as far as interacting that way. So it's very, very important to pay attention to other conversations and be a part of that conversation so you can kind of be a part of, the narrative there and help drive that news cycle, contribute to it, and be aware of it, for your own work on a day-to-day basis. That's kind of the basic of what I use TweetDeck for. Hootsuite's kind of the same platform, Hootsuite. And the benefit of Hootsuite is that it's got really good analytics on the back end, so you can kind of track how many people are talking about you, who's talking about you, what they're saying, which tweets were the most retweeted and replied to. So you can kind of gauge, how effective you are just on the back end with Hootsuite. So those are the two probably biggest third-party applications that you can use. And I think setting it up to search and pull as much information as possible is the way to go about that.
Referring to a question that was asked earlier, if you really want to connect in a really local, locally, Freedom Connect is a great social media tool to use. You get to connect with
Say
people.
that again?
Freedom Connect.
Yes.
It's really good to connect locally. You find people who live near, like in the same neighborhood you live in. You get to have information where rallies are and stuff like that, meetings, all in your area. So if you want to connect locally, Freedom Connect is a great tool to use.
Freedom Connector was a platform built by FreedomWorks. How many of you used Freedom Connector? Okay, so a few of you. This is a great tool, and I kind of viewed it as like a triangle for a while. It's where, Facebook is to connect you with people that you already know and in your day-to-day life. Twitter's, woo! Wow, okay, awesome. But Twitter's a way to give you a line to people that you normally wouldn't be able to connect with. And Freedom Connector really connects you to people that you may not know, but who live near you in your neighborhood, in your county, whatever. And you can organize and really kind of connect for GeoTV stuff, all those sort of things. So once you're logged in, it gives you, ways to kind of drill down by county. You can look at maps, look at calendars, see what's going on in your area. People will post rallies, they'll post get out the vote efforts, all those kind of things happen, meetings, and people post them on the calendar there, and you can find and search for people that are local. Just because it's all geo-targeted. So you log in and say, I'm in this city, I want to connect with other people that like freedom in this city, and it'll show you all of these people, and you can send them messages and really start connecting and working together. So it is a really great tool, and that's freedomconnector.com. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Hi. If, say, there's a vote on, say, July 30th that you want to vote against, when you conduct a media campaign, a social media campaign to affect that vote, does it matter whether you time things in a certain way, or do you just throw everything out against
Timing
it?
absolutely matters, and I think that it all depends on exactly what the issue is and what the circumstances are leading up to it. But be smart. If there's a huge debate going on that night, or if, for example, a couple of weeks ago, gay marriage was the whole conversation. You want to pay attention to that, so you're not trying to fight with the media too much, because you don't want your stuff to get lost. So don't dump it on a Friday afternoon, those kind of things, which is what the White House likes to do. Try not to do that, because you actually want people to see what you're pushing out. You don't want to bury it or hide it. So make sure that you're kind of paying attention and finding, ways to strategically put the information out there. At a time that it makes sense to put it out there. So, you obviously want to turn up the heat and start putting more pressure on in the last week, or the last 2 weeks, really start doing more legwork on that. But you can't just start 2 weeks out and try to change an entire narrative. There's a lot of work that has to be done, especially on larger issues, to really lay the groundwork and get the information out there, and then kind of build on that as you get closer and closer.
Back here.
Okay.
Hello, Tabitha.
Hello.
Using Facebook, you get to show a lot of your personality to the people that you're connected with. On Twitter, it's a lot more difficult to do. Do you suggest showing your personality and letting people, getting to know people and having conversations that aren't just about the topic that you're concerned about as a citizen watchdog? And how do you go about doing that?
I 1000% support that, and I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that with Twitter, because it is so fluid, you can tweet things all day long and nobody really cares because they're probably following a bunch of other people, and very few people actually log in and then read back over the last day's tweets. They might scroll back a little just to kind of see, but it's pretty much in the moment. So if you look at my presentation right now, Javier's back there making fun of me, working hard, catching Z's, sleeping on the job. And I retweeted it and said, we're prepping for my presentation, whatever. And so there's a banter that goes on that really does help build relationships. And some of my first friendships in the political sphere happened on Twitter because I talked to them first. I responded to their tweet about a movie and said, wow, yeah, I really like that movie too. Or, hey, have you read this book because I love this book? Or last night, hey, I'm in Orlando. Where should we go eat? Those kind of things are great to do because it builds a rapport with people, and the whole point is to be social and to build connections. That's what social media is. And so I'll tweet about stupid things, music, movies, road trips. I'll take pictures of places I am, and let people know just kind of what I'm up to. And I feel like people on Twitter know me pretty well as far as they know what I do on a day-to-day basis. They know my job. And so they can view me as a resource because they know that I pretty much work with bloggers. I travel a lot. Hey, I'm in Orlando. And so people that I've been building a rapport with for a long time can say, cool, I would love to come see you in Orlando. And I know a few people that I was able to really connect with just because I put out, hey, I'm here, let's meet up. One of my favorite stories is I joked about Nutella with Michelle Malkin before the first time I even met her. And the first time I met her was at Right Online a few years ago, and she walked out from behind her table signing books and was like, you're one of my first Twitter friends, and made a joke about Nutella because that was the relationship that we were able to establish. So, talk about that kind of stuff, and I think that people really do get to know you as a human being, and therefore you're a much more credible source when you do talk about other stuff. They listen to you because they have some kind of context for what your perspective is, and I think you're a lot more effective if you're a human.
Facebook kind of frustrates me because every time I sign in, it seems like it has a different format, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, it's just like...
You're not doing anything wrong. That is Facebook doing it wrong, is the short story. Facebook makes changes all the time, and they think that they're being helpful. Generally, it's just being a pain in the butt. So what you want to do is, try to keep up with it. At the end of the day, it's some of the main things are pretty simple still. The posting isn't changing much. Watching, the feed isn't changing much. So stick with what you know, and if you have time to figure it out and click through, there really isn't a better way to go about keeping up with the changes than just doing it, because they do change it like every 2 weeks. And it is impossible to keep up with all of the insights, all of those things. It's all changing all the time. And so, stick to what you know. When you log in, it's at the top. You can still post whatever you want to post there. You can still read your feed. Stick to that, and as you have time to really kind of dive in and figure out other stuff, figure it out. And if you don't know, ask somebody. Say, hey, this changed. I used to know how to do this, but I don't. Can you help me with that? I ask people for help on stuff all the time, and I help people with stuff on it all the time. It's kind of trial and error, I think, in a lot of ways, because they don't do a really good job of announcing all the changes all the time. So
Okay, we got two more questions
two more
left.
questions. Okay.
Are there any legal liabilities that we need to be aware of in posting any of these things, especially with links and so forth? That's number one. And number two, I've seen several articles where Google is removing bloggers because they're offensive or whatever. Is there anything that we need to particularly avoid so as not to become the victim of that?
Don't lie about people. Don't slander people. Don't write things that aren't true about people, because that is a legal issue. It's a violation of terms of service. So Facebook, Twitter, any of those platforms can delete you if you're writing nasty things about people that aren't true. They can terminate you for hate speech. They can terminate you for all of those things, and they're well within their rights to do so, because these are all privately owned entities, and they can make whatever rules they want to make. So you have to be respectful of that. And as long as you're saying things that are within the bounds of truth, you're gonna be probably okay. There are some people that are gonna go nuts, but honestly, on a day-to-day basis, it's really hard to get people to take, hey, they tweeted a mean thing at me, seriously. So you want to just kind of steer clear of it because it's not worth the battle a lot of times. You don't want to end up in a situation where the media plays up, oh, look, this Tea Partier said this, and you want to kind of be careful about that. As far as Google removing blogs and that kind of stuff, they have all kinds of weird algorithms. They'll eliminate people who cross-post things if they see the same thing posted on a couple sites, I think, or at least they did. I don't know. They change a lot. I'd be more concerned about things like on Twitter. The left is coordinating attacks to shut down conservative accounts by reporting them as spam. And Twitter has an algorithm where if a certain number of people report that person as spam, they'll automatically suspend the account. And they figured out that loophole. So they were able to shut down a significant amount of conservative accounts just because they were annoyed with them and they get irritated because we win on that platform and they want to silence it. So what you do in that case is make as much noise as possible, connect with other people and say, hey guys, help me with this. My account got shut down because of X, Y, and Z. And people like Michelle Malkin and Dana Lash and the really large influencers in this medium have done an amazing job of standing up and pushing back directly on Twitter and saying, fix this because this person did not deserve to be shut down. There's nothing spammy about their account. Fix it. And they generally will get it back up. So it's a matter of making as much noise as you can and generating buzz when there is actually a problem, because generally the people in this room will have your back on it if you're right. Is that it? One more. Okay.
A facetious question. Time to go home. It's apparent to me that many of the folks who are on Twitter, and even in your presentation, drink a lot of caffeine. For those of us that are in our 70s, is there another way that we can be as active as you are and get things done?
I always answer that question by telling people that far and away the most active demographic on both Twitter and Facebook is 55 and up, followed only by 45 and up. So they are the most active demographic across the board on social platforms, especially in the political space. So it's not just something that's for kids. I think you just choose your focus, you figure out what you want to focus on, and you get really good at it. There are certain people that focus on foreign affairs, there are certain people that focus on, we have a guy in Oklahoma who does nothing but tweet about the Oklahoma legislature, and he does an incredible job, and he'll give play-by-plays of every event, of every legislative session, tell everybody what's going on, who's saying what, take pictures of the floor. And he's focused on one thing. So it's not necessarily, scattered all over the place, kind of like my feed is. I'll talk about everything. But you focus on one or two things and do it well, and you'll become a resource, and people will look to you and figure out what you're saying. There's Steve Eggleston in Wisconsin. When it comes down to election nights, that guy is like insane with numbers. He's like a machine. So I know that on election nights, I can go look at his feed and see, wow, okay, these counties are still out, this percentage is still coming in. Whatever your specialty is, whatever you really want to focus on that and do it well. You don't have to be all over the map or do all of it. I would recommend picking one platform and doing it well as opposed to doing 5 platforms and then freaking out because you don't have time for them. Choose one thing that you think you understand the best and can be the most effective at, and go with that. All right, I'll be around for the rest of the afternoon, so I'm happy to take questions. Put my email up again one more time real quick. And you feel free to contact me, tweet me, whatever you would like to do. Those notebooks that floated around, if you haven't written your Twitter handle down, do that. Or if you're done, bring them to that back table and collect them. And I will be tweeting out from the Franklin Center a list of all of the Twitter handles of people that were here today. So just go check at Franklin Center, and you can see that later today or maybe tomorrow. But thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it.